Kingston Cole.
Hold on.
Oops. There you go. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm Kingston Cole, and I'm calling to order the Marin Wildfire Citizens Oversight Committee meeting of Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. Item number 2, transfer the chair. It is my great privilege to transfer the imaginary gavel to John.
So
Take it away, John.
should we make a gavel that looks like a Pulaski, which is a wildland firefighting
He's
tool?
got 5 of them at home.
I've got a bunch, actually have a bunch
There's so many of them.
at home. Okay, so thank you very much for that, and thank you for your service over the last 6 months. It was wonderful being vice chair to your chair.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin with roll call. It's your cue.
Sorry. Jenny Biggs.
Here.
Jennifer Howard.
Here.
Pat Randolph.
You're on mute, Pat.
I'm here, and now that I'm muted.
Larry Chu.
Not here.
John McCauley.
I'm here.
Spencer CS.
Here.
Nice. Kingston Cole.
How about that for timing?
I'm here. I was the last one.
Larry Minicus. Not here. And Rebecca Suggs.
And can we do the AB 2449 for Jenny, please?
Yes. Where is that?
I can do it from memory if you like.
Yeah. I
So,
don't
so we do have
it
member
down.
Jenny Biggs attending through Assembly Bill 2449 exemption to the Brown Act for a just cause of daycare. Jenny, can you confirm that nobody over the age of 18 is with you in your room?
Confirm. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jenny's very quiet.
Maybe we could turn it over.
You say I'm
Yeah.
quiet?
There we
There
go.
we
We
go.
got you good now.
It's just the TV speakers.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so item number 4 is agenda adjustments, and I do actually have an agenda adjustment if you guys don't mind. We're having a conversation a little bit later on the meeting schedule and frequency, item 9. I think it would make sense to do that after we go through the report, so we kind of know where we are, and then we can figure out what the road to completion of this year is, and then we can talk about how we see the future. So I think it's a very valuable topic. I just think it might be better further down the agenda.
No
No problem with that. Do we need a motion?
I think we do.
Yes, we
So
do.
moved.
Second, third.
Quick roll call.
Jenny Biggs.
Ellen and I.
Jennifer Howard.
Yes.
Pat Randolph.
Yes.
John McCauley.
Yes.
Spencer CS.
Aye.
Kingston Cole.
Yes.
Rebecca Suggs.
Yes.
Okay, so now we go to open time for public expression. Are there any members of the public here on our meeting?
There are none.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through that rigmarole. If people from the public do show up later, let me know, because I'm going to assume they're not here until you tell me, and then once they are, we'll proceed recognizing their rights. Okay, next up, item number 6, executive officer's report, oral report. Executive officer.
You bet. Thanks. I'm sure you guys have all been watching the various news items or apps that tell you where fires are throughout the state. Quite a few fires. We did have a fair amount of lightning in the northern Sierras, extending down actually into the southern Sierras. While it seems like it's really active compared to the last 2 years, this is about normal for late July fire activity wise, which is does concern me a little bit as far as when we're going to get into September and October. This type of pace right now could, if the weather continues like it is, spell to be difficult September, October, and especially the heat. I'm not a big fan of saying heat has much to do with fire behavior right now, but the prolonged effects of that heat later in the season with the fuels drying and becoming available, that's where I get concerned. So I think I was saying during the board meeting, the way I kind of monitor, besides how many fires there are, is how many incident management teams are assigned to fires right now. And it's relatively small. So the fires, while there may be quite a few fires in the state, they aren't exceeding a difficult level of complexity where we only have a few incident management teams assigned now. Board meeting I felt went well. We had a very healthy discussion on the Joint Powers Authority revisions. And pertinent to your guys' interests, the the recommendations for the Community Oversight Committee name, changing the position to be more community-based organization oriented, and adding a non-voting seat supported through the high school program and in Marin was well supported, as was removing the ATC from the JPA language so that that can be a real working committee rather than one that was bound by rules of public meetings and not being able to interact in fear of creating a Brown Act violation. That was well supported, but one thing that we wanted to assure is that people didn't take it out of context, that if we're removing it from the JPA language, that we aren't removing the committee from our procedures. So we will document that we are going to maintain advisory technical committee in our standard operating procedures so that it wasn't voted on by the board, because if it's voted on by the board, then it's a standing Brown Act committee. So those were the two main things I think that were most pertinent to the Citizens or Community Oversight Committee once we, not yet, I'll just say COC. The next step now is we are preparing a standardized staff report for each of the member agencies, along with a red line version, and we're sending it to each of the member agencies. We need 75% of them, or 13, to vote yes, and then the JPA revisions will be approved.
How long do you think that's gonna take?
If everything runs smoothly, October, November. I've asked for it to be done by November because one of the other stipulations was the 2% holdback for abatement in D space, and we receive our first tax proceeds in December. So I wanted to be able to go live with that before we distribute the D space monies to the member agencies.
And did the documents also include removing the 2% abatement? Because that was one of the proposals also, right?
Correct, it does.
So that did also.
The 2% removal and also the 10% clarification that 10% admin applies to all across the budget fields was in there as well.
Okay.
And I think with that, I don't think I have much more for executive officer report to share with you guys.
Any questions? Okay, moving along. Next item is the consent calendar. Does anybody want to pull anything or from the consent calendar, or are we good with the minutes? Hearing no one wanting to pull, I would take a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve. I second.
Okay, roll call.
Jenny Biggs,
Yes.
Jennifer Howard,
Yes.
Pat Randolph,
Yes,
John McCauley,
Yep.
Spencer CS,
Yes.
Kingston Cole,
Yes.
Larry Minicus,
Aye.
Rebecca Suggs.
yes.
And a note for the record, we have Larry Minicus here, obviously, since he voted yes.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you see here?
Half my time is under road control, paving. Okay, so next one is item number 8, election of COC vice chair. You're going to take care of that?
Yeah, you bet. So as we know, this is the season for, we just transitioned from vice chair to chair. And so that creates the vacancy for the vice chair, 6-month term. We haven't changed the bylaws for any of that. And you know, what we've been trying to do, and one of the goals of the membership when the bylaws were written, was to make sure that all of the members of the COC have an opportunity to serve in the role of chair. And looking at timing, we have 2 members who haven't been chair yet, Spencer and Jenny, and you know, I'll stop right there.
I would love to nominate Jenny Biggs to be vice chair.
Second.
Okay.
And now that the railroad is being built, Joshua, do you want to take a roll call if
Yes.
that's okay with the chair?
Jenny Biggs,
It would be
Aye.
an honor, yes.
Jennifer Howard,
Aye.
Pat Randolph,
Yes,
Larry Chu. Oh, sorry. John McCauley.
Aye.
Spencer CS.
Aye.
Kingston Cole.
Aye.
Larry Minicus.
Aye.
Rebecca Suggs.
yes.
Science.
Thank you. Every time I wonder.
Just think bias.
Sorry.
Okay, so the next item is the meeting frequency, which we're going to push further along. So now we move to board monitoring reports for the executive committee and board of directors. So who covers the executive
Is
committee?
it Pat?
Oh,
Rebecca stood in for me. Thank you,
Oh,
Rebecca.
you're welcome. So, executive committee, Mark covered the big agenda item, which was the JPA agreement changes. And then they discussed the insurance issue, and that one probably better discussed when we do the board meeting report. And then they did the agenda for the board meeting. So the interesting pieces for the COC would have been the discussion of the changes to the COC in the JPA agreement, and Mark already covered that. I think that's it.
Okay, so that covers both. So now we move on to annual report committees. So,
No.
oh, okay, there was more. Okay, I'm
Well-
sorry. I missed that. I thought there was one.
10B is board of directors.
Yeah, I thought she did both. I
No,
misunderstood.
she
Okay,
was- yeah.
so board.
So on the board, between Mark and Rebecca, they have covered most of it. The important things, I think the insurance question was very interesting. And what is most interesting to me is right now, apparently, the insurance commissioner and all the state things that control things aren't allowed to consider mitigation, like the work that Marin Wildfire is doing. And so that is one of the changes. And apparently, if I may have this slightly wrong, but I think there was a bill before the legislature to allow consideration for mitigation. So take into account not only the work that things like Marin Wildfire are doing, but the work we're individually doing to make our homes safer. And I think other than that, it's between Mark and Rebecca, they pretty well covered the items, unless somebody has something else that they'd like to add.
I just have a thought about that as we're in the midst of writing our report. This insurance issue seems like something really interesting that Marin Wildfire is doing. And what, down the road might we be talking about in our capacity as oversight? I mean, I trust that we're going to be thrilled with what's being done, but I'm just sort of curious, how do we take that step as we're observing things happen in real time? And that's just putting it out there. That's nothing to know. Nothing that needs to be discussed or anything. It's just going on in my head.
I do think it's a topic that the COC, as you pointed out, should be looking at, should be watching, because we are members of the community. The community's, I think, going to be really interested in the whole topic, no matter where it gets talked about. And if this is one of the places to let it get talked about, then, and maybe it's that we are getting more aware during the year rather than just waiting till we do the report, but being actively interested in raising our hands in meetings and making comments or asking questions.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think Jenny has a good point that in the current way we are looking at things, by looking just at the work plan, might not give a logical place for a discussion of insurance to come in, but that's definitely something to keep in mind for the future.
Could I ask a clarifying question for me, at least? So our role is principally really looking at oversight of operations to see that the operations are working in accordance with the policy that is set. Is that correct?
With the JPA agreement and the enabling legislation.
Yeah.
So those square corners, we're not management.
Right.
We're not board of directors.
So to the extent that we see how the board actually deals with the issue of insurance and whatever operations that they set forth, that would be something I would think we would naturally be taking a look at to see whether or not they were delivering what they said they were gonna deliver. So I think it's a relevant issue for sure. The question is what role does the COC have in it? And I'm seeking clarification on that. I mean, to be actively involved in discussion as citizens with regard to the insurance issue, that makes sense. As a committee, is this something, I mean, how do we wrestle with operations versus policy?
So
here?
I just, in my way of thinking is that this is just a really interesting activity that the core funding is participating in. And so when we're reviewing and dividing our observations into groups, and for all I know, all it really means is we know this is going on. This is where some of our core funding is going. We don't see any reason to be concerned about it, but I like the idea of being more aware of it in real time. So I don't actually think comments or questions necessarily in real time are appropriate or relevant, but I think our own awareness of what's going on and what bucket we're putting it in our own observation practices.
I mean, to me, to the extent that CORE was gonna make a major expenditure in this area, then I think that we want to see whether that expenditure is aligned with the enabling legislation. But otherwise, we're not management, so I mean, at least at this juncture, I don't see it getting into our report. And we continue to discuss this whole question of where we live. Now, there is the design of the enabling document did have some language about, and we can't comment. So there is some flexibility there to make, general comments, but I would suggest let's wait till next year and see what kind of comes out of it and whether there's any significant efforts that MWPA is making that have a cost associated with them. I mean, I think that would be
I'm
something
more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I went up and testified before Connolly's committee, his first subcommittee meeting, and suggested, my testimony was, why isn't everybody else in the state looking at us? Why aren't they emulating us?
Right.
Yeah,
And why aren't we getting a break on our insurance?
We didn't get to that, but David was very appreciative of it. Just somebody standing there talking about it. And I think we can certainly do that as individuals. It's such a broad, troublesome area right now, and it's just the state is just bogged down beyond belief on his policies setting down. So.
Yeah, I have some knowledge of the whole process of how underwriting occurs and all that kind of stuff. I did mention to Mark, I actually teach it in my course in Berkeley, just in a very light, superficial, top level way. I told Mark that he and I can sit down and have lunch sometime and I'll walk through it. And you might have some interest as a committee at some future date for educational purposes, and I'll just leave it at that. So I think, have we covered this topic enough for now? Okay.
I do like the idea, though, that actually your talk actually being part of an agenda.
Well, I'll have him look at it, see whether it's worthy of
information.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick question with regard to what was the big core discussion, and they were talking about with putting, what were they gonna, how is core spending and insurance connected? I lost that.
So John's big question is, if we start expend and make a core project that has, actually it could be any dollar value, but if we specify a core project to work on the initiative of improving accessibility to homeowners insurance in Marin, is that in alignment with the enabling language?
Good.
That would be a question that's pertinent to the COC.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
And first to the board, because does that prevent wildfire?
Right.
So, okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we're good for now? Okay, let's turn that back on. Okay, so next, thank you, is, we've done that. So now we're into the annual report committees. The first one is the local one. So that's Larry Squared and John. Larry's not here, the other way. So I kind of give you a 50,000 foot fast pass through it. I know you've all read the document. What I would suggest is, as I move through it, if there's any point of disagreement with regards to our recommendations, et cetera, let's stop and have that conversation as we go through the thing sequentially. because I believe that what we're doing as a committee is we're reaching general consensus with regards to the recommendations of each of the subcommittee. And then subsequently, there will be a writing process that we'll talk about later in our agenda that doesn't change concepts, but might change words. So I think we want to make sure we're aligned on the concepts. Does that seem reasonable?
Right.
Okay, good. All right, so our approach on local was we looked at all agencies, all 17 of them, for a series of questions, and then we did a more in-depth review on 5 of them. The items we looked at for everybody was there an attestation from the senior executive of each agency that indicated that local funds that are restricted for either spending in the appropriate areas or are restricted for future use. We wanted to make sure that cumulative unspent funds are being tracked by agency and restricted for future funds. And we wanted to make sure that the files had adequate evidence of a higher level of service, which of course is our baseline at the beginning as we start for things, right? So what were our findings? Under the overall review findings section, the first paragraph talks about kind of what we found. Only 8 of the 17 agencies had received their attestations within 9 months after the close of the fiscal year. Mark, in his response to this comment, will later describe how actually he's got almost all of them now, but you got to draw a line somewhere, and we thought that 9 months was plenty of time if we're serious about this to get this done. So we'll make a finding that that was what we found. We had a variety of people of different levels of responsibility within the organization signing them. We're making a recommendation that it should be the senior executive and whatever board oversight agency is there. And we found that the cumulative differences were not tracked. We asked for inception to date cumulative differences by each individual member agency. They were not available when we started. I'll get into more detail about that in a minute. So we'll comment more on that in a second. So as far as recommendations were concerned, first off, the attestations should include the amount of restricted cumulative funds so that everybody agrees what they are, right? Between us and the individual agencies. And it should be signed by an executive officer and the head of the governing body for each of the agencies. So speak up if you disagree with that recommendation. And then we took a look at the underlying project and financial reporting process. We found that one organization didn't provide anything, and the rest of them were in a variety of formats that was difficult to assess. They were not really sharp in terms of how they presented themselves. So our second recommendation is that MWPA get a little harder with regards to expectations regarding compliance. You're giving money out, you've got checks, you don't have to give them the checks. So our suggestion would be that we expect that we receive clear, uniform financial and project reports from all member agencies. And if we don't, then withhold their funds until such time as they, let me give you one more second, as to their level of compliance. I asked Mark about the reasonableness of that, and because of the timing of when the checks go out, there's still quite a gap between when things are due and it makes this an actionable thing. It's just a way to say we're serious about this. So comments on that?
Okay, so I don't disagree with, obviously I don't disagree with your findings because I don't have any reason or way to do that.
Well, you can.
And I don't really disagree with your recommendations, but I'm a little bit confused because it sounds like it's you're telling management how they should do it. I'm not saying it's not that they shouldn't do it that way. It's just that for our purposes and our role, we go back to the same conversation. What's our role? Where are our boundaries? Is there any other way to say these are our findings? Because I feel like that's what our job is. But the recommendations, it's not consistent with what we're saying our role.
We're an oversight organization, and I think we have a right to make recommendations.
Oh, I'm not saying we do or don't have a right. I'm not going to go down that path, actually. It's not consistent with how we're saying we want to do our job. It sounds like we're telling management how to do their job, or board.
I respectfully disagree. I think that when there are findings like this, we should make a recommendation about how these problems are actually addressed. And we do. I think these are good recommendations. So I think this is why we do this. We make recommendations on how people sort of get back in line with what we think the intent was. So I think we're in comfortable territory making those kind of recommendations. The board can, of course, elect to reject
Yeah,
or accept
exactly.
them.
Right.
It's not our call. But at least what we're doing is serving the function of making a recommendation that they improve their operations by implementing these particular recommendations or revise them in some way, but address the issue.
I have a question. What is timely compliance? What is?
So what's
timely?
Yeah, when's the stuff all due?
They, according to our disbursement policy, they need to report back to us by September 30. And their first check distributions that we send out is January.
It's September. This is for the prior year. So you
Correct.
close as of June.
Okay.
And then 3 months later in September, you report how you spent your money. Right. And then we're saying, okay, give us, make sure that the information regarding how you spend it, what you spend it on is available both in terms of the financial records and the operational records to staff, because it's 3 months after you're in.
Right.
And if you're not doing it, our first check for the subsequent year is 6 months after you're in. That gives you a whole half a year to get your act together.
Yeah.
Did you consider the possibility of saying, look, bill us when you do the work as a recommendation?
Did not consider that,
Okay.
especially because
Pretty draconian, but
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it would be an incentive for people to like move ahead with this stuff and then claim the money as they need it.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways to resolve this, which
Yeah.
goes to
Yeah,
the comment, and I think it's like, you say, this is something wrong, this is one way we think it can be fixed. The
Right.
board can choose a different way to fix it,
Right.
but I think we have the right to say, here's a logical way to fix it.
Yeah.
right, and we're not saying that though, I mean, maybe I wouldn't have, one option to fix this could be, is, I mean, if you, I don't know, my comments stand, I don't really have anything to add to what I said,
Okay.
I feel,
Can
it's what I think.
Yeah, I get it. Can I get what's
And I don't know,
the concern? That I mean, if we make the recommendation, what's the downside?
I always think about what our role is, not just for how this group does the role, but what kind of precedent do we want to set? What is a good, how do we fulfill the role well for ourselves and for the future, for the whole organization?
And I think this is actually how you fulfill the role well, to not make us, to see something that we see as wrong and not give a suggestion as to how to fix it seems to me to be kind of toothless.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that our job is to see what's wrong.
No, I'm sorry.
And to suggest that it be
Yeah.
fixed.
Well,
But not
I
to
think,
come up with a solution.
I think if you have an issue, then you have a responsibility to recommend a solution. You don't just walk into the office and say it's being done wrong. Oh, well,
Not in this
this is
capacity.
where we.
Not
This
in
is
this
where
capacity.
I.
We can disagree. So let me just, as a way of moving things along, are you alone in your point of view? Or are there others that share your point of view that would make it worth of further conversation? So Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll say,
Jenny?
I also have a little nudge around saying, hold the check back. Don't give them the check. I would say reword it. I mean, the sales happen in February and they ought to be, no, I'm kidding. I think if you just reworded it to say one way to accomplish this would be, or one way to see how important this is to withhold the
Mitigate
check.
this.
I'm fine with that. I mean, one way is fine. I think we're trying to get the concepts down here and then a writing committee will move it forward, which will be a thing. But yeah, I think one way, and again, that's, to me, I think that's okay. There may be other ways, but I just think that we have to comment beyond like, hey, this is screwed up. And then like, we have to say, this is one way to fix it. I don't think there's an issue.
As a taxpayer representative, you've got to be able to say something.
Right.
But you got to say this may be not the only way to fix it.
Right.
But we have to put some teeth into this stuff.
Right. I mean, you've got the keys to the kingdom, and I think you have to use your power mark more significantly with regards to this topic, because you have 17
Okay.
different agencies.
So I'd really like to know if I'm alone in my thinking.
Yeah, sure.
So, and I I think I'm where Rebecca is too, which is that I don't think you're alone. And I think that there is a way to fix it, as you suggested, which is just to say that this is not a mandate. This is one suggestion from the Citizens Oversight Committee.
Yeah,
So is there a
I would-
consensus if we go with the one suggestion approach?
Well,
Pat?
Yeah, I see the inconsistencies when we say we're not making policy and then we suggest a policy. So I sort of agree with Jennifer, and I think there are ways to fix it where it's one suggestion or something to that effect.
Way to mitigate.
Okay, I just don't think we
There's one more
should,
here.
yeah.
Well, four of us were here at the very start, and we had no guardrails, and we saw where that went. And I think we've done a really good job putting guardrails around what the COC is and how we interact with the board, knowing that the board really is the decision-making body. And I think if you have a COC with oversight, making recommendations is part of what a COC should be doing as part of its responsibilities. Now, the board then, being the board, can take that and dice it up any way they want from there. We're not mandating anything at this point. We've gone through this, we spent a lot of time on this, and I think it's helpful to the board to hear our recommendations, whether they accept them or not or a second thing.
Okay, so then when it comes to recommendations, then if it stays in this report that we're all gonna be signing off on, we've only considered the one recommendation that you put in. There could be different ways of doing it. I'm not suggesting we come up with them, I'm just pointing out that what we'll be doing is making a single recommendation.
And I think what we're suggesting now, responding to your legitimate concern, is that you use language that says one way to solve this is.
Okay.
So I think that's what's on the table.
I do have one thing that I think that may help some discomfort that people are expressing, is that we already have it in policy, the ability to withhold a local or D-space distribution if they have not given us the data that we're asking for.
Well, you can write it that way.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Just
So this is really then a clear-cut case of if we've investigated it and we have learned that the policy, which is in place, is not actually being carried out, then I think we have a recommendation that we operate according to the policy.
Absolutely, I don't have any question,
Yeah.
any issues with that.
Yeah, and so I would word it that way strongly, not merely as a suggestion, as one way to do it. I think we can recommend. I think we can also suggest, but in this case, it sounds like we may want to make a recommendation that we operate according to policy.
Yeah,
We
you
are
gotta
not as a
cite the,
policy-making body. That's the board's
let's
responsibility.
cite the board's power first and plug that in and then say, one way to do it is this one. We think it's a problem.
So is there currently a consensus around how to word this? Is there an agreement? I'll just see if I can play it back. So if the recommendation acknowledged that there is an existing policy that gives you the right to withhold funds, and that we suggest that one way of reaching a higher level of compliance is to follow this policy, that we suggest that this policy be followed.
Yeah.
Yes.
We recommend it.
As a lawyer, I have to tell you, it's good to cite the power that you're gonna use.
Yeah, that's fine. So are we good around that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, and I would suggest that instead of having the subcommittee reword this, that it be done by whoever does the writing, because we're all gonna react to this later, right?
Right.
The
We're gonna do
right,
one more round.
I don't wanna do another round, I wanna get this thing out. Yeah, so I'm suggesting that since we've had a good robust conversation around it, whoever's on the writing committee, take a shot at it, because we all have a chance at a future meeting to say, we didn't get that the way we wanted.
That's fine.
Okay, we good with that one?
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing deals with the fact that we have in the appendix, we finally got the data that said, okay, it's people are reasonably getting their spend done, but is not that the board has limited its comment to simply acknowledgement of the expenditures. We suggest that the board conduct an annual review of each member agency's expenditure activity level and the compliance of individual expenditures with the tax measure and the JPA agreement. The local funds are not merely a pass-through disbursement of tax proceeds without MWPA oversight. The board may have observations on the effort of any duplication between local and corp expenditures for selected member agencies, but the efforts of individual member agencies should both be reviewed and accepted by the board and MWPA as long as these member agencies are in compliance with the tax measures in the JPA agreement. So we're saying the board should take a hard look at this at least once a year, because these 220s are not small.
So I mean, was that a way of saying, I'm sorry, I'm gonna shortcut it to rubber stamping the reports that come in without actually looking to see whether
It's the other way around. We want them to actually look at them.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
You've
saying
been
the
rubber
current
stamping
practice
it,
appears to be rubber stamping.
The current situation is that they were, what was the word? They were acknowledging.
Right, okay.
And not looking into the 60%'s got tons of eyes on it. I mean, I feel great about how the 60%'s working.
Right.
Lots of people looking at it, and these 220s are just kind of not, given the fact that also if we looked at the underlying records of MWPA staff, they're rough, right? I mean, we had to spend some time trying to even get the cumulative data. And I'm not saying it's accurate, by the way. I mean, we're not gonna know it's accurate in terms of what's on that last page that we just received until the individual agencies also confirm. Because the records we saw in the detail were all different. Nothing agreed to anything in total. So we'll know this is right when the agencies say, yeah, we see it the same way you see it.
Can you say what specifically you think they should do? I'm just curious.
They should look at over it just like the board looks over the 60s. To say, okay, here are the items, we've read them, you know.
Can I give an example
Sure.
related to the core? So when we close the books for our 60%, and we have and it's more in detail with the finance committee than with the full board, we show our project tracking spreadsheet of all of our core items. We show how much has been spent, and we show how much it's going to be withheld for continuation of that project in the future years. I think what John is recommending would be add the 220s to that analysis that goes, at least that's the way I'm interpreting it, John.
I want the board to look at the 220s and say, wow, we don't set policy, but the board does. Wow, Nevada's got its own plan for home hardening money, and we've got a 60% core thing that's doing that also. And we've got demonstration gardens that are happening, and we've got, you know, all these other things that are happening. The board's role is to make sure this thing in 10 years gets passed again. And are the 20s being effectively managed with some level? It's not just a pass through, close your eyes, give the money out, don't even pay attention to it. It's more like, no, tell us how you spent it, and tell us that you're keeping track of it, and that if you haven't spent it, you're going to spend it later, and you're spending it on what seems to be reasonable things. That's not certainly our job, as long as it's inside the four corners, but it's not inappropriate for the board to take some level of look at it, because the impression I've gotten historically is pass through. We give them the money, off it goes.
And if I may offer, just to help clarify, I feel we're hitting the front end of what you're talking about, because when the board goes through the work plan, the spreadsheets that we provide them show for the Nevada zone, or let me use the Ross Valley zone as an example, because there's so many member agencies.
Right.
It shows all the core projects, and it shows right below it all of the local.
That's what I was trying to get
So
at.
on the front end, we're doing that.
Yeah.
Where I agree with you, on the back end, we can do a better job of showing progress or lack of progress.
So you want a progress report on the back end?
Yeah,
That's how I would, as I mentally think about how staff is going to respond to your recommendation. To me, I think we've got it on the front end. We need to improve the back end.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, because when I asked you specifically, because from what I've observed, the board is actually observing everything that the agencies are doing on the front end.
Correct.
So I think the recommendation or suggestion, or whatever you want to call it, makes sense. But I would be asking of staff is, it entails more time and effort in order to be able to do that step of actually tracking what's happening, the progress reports with regard to those local programs.
And
The question is, is that reasonable? Do we have the means to be able to do that appropriately? Or are we suggesting that they somehow change
the
their operations
the
in order to
means of
support it?
tracking the dollars and cents, yes. We have the bandwidth to do that,
Okay.
to actually go and observe every single project.
No.
Not suggesting
That's-
any of
It's
that.
kind of,
Yeah.
it's just kind of,
For
you were just
the-
looking for a report.
In fact, I mean, we've created an iterative relationship between the COC and Marin Wildfire staff, specifically our finance staff. We've already made adjustments to how we're closing out 23-24 based on the conversations that we have. And so this little more detailed closeout of local and D-Space has already been incorporated in the spreadsheets that we're going to be sending out to the member agencies. So I think 23-24, even though the process will have started before your report was out, but since we're in an iterative process, we're actually, you will see improvements for 23-24.
So do you specifically have a sort of a way to collect progress reports from the local agency on what they did with the money
On an annual basis,
on an annual basis?
Yes.
So that exists.
yes.
So does that satisfy our?
Well, yeah,
the
but the
detail
last
of the data was not there.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we looked, I'm a show me kind of guy, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
can say whatever he wants, but I want to see it because
Yeah.
that was my job for 35 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I went to see it, for instance, as we get into 5 individuals, you'll see it, Mill Valley had 0, okay? And that's wrong. They'd spent the money, but it's not even in the database. If the database is that inaccurate after 9 months, the eyes are not on it. So we're
Right.
just suggesting there should be eyes on it,
All right.
including at the board level on an annual basis once a year.
So it's kind of like.
Because to finish one last thing, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
is that there's competition at the 60% level, right?
Mhm.
Especially, it's a little more complicated in San Nevada because it's one thing, or San Rafael, it's one thing, but the others, everyone's fighting for those monies, right? To make sure that the highest best use, that's good management, that's how stuff works, right? If the 20s are just going, here's your money, here's your money, here's your money, there's no conversation about how the money is being spent, there's no oversight, there's not a significant oversight of it, the 20s can be wasted, right? And that's 2 20s is 40, that's like almost half of the total spend. So we're just saying that at least once a year, you should have a decent conversation. If the board says it's effective for Novato to do home hardening in the 20, and there's also a 60, if they think that's okay, that's fine. But do they notice that's happening? If there's not some dialogue about, oh, this is how we're spending our 20s, let's sit down and seriously look about it, then you have the opportunity for inefficiency.
So I get it, and that was a practical question that was being raised with regard to specifically how you get that done, how you actually connect the dots here.
Do you have a
who
board?
does it,
Yeah.
and how does the staff do it, which is why I was trying to get to Mark on it.
Yeah.
To say, how does that?
It's agendized,
Does it work?
at least one meeting a year, it's agendized, and everyone, it's looked at, it's effectively looked at as a agenda item.
I'm also curious, and I keep raising these things where we don't have to have this conversation, we don't have to talk about it, but I'm sort of curious about how the history of the way the JPA was formed, whether there's an expectation that the money gets passed through are you gonna get resistance from agencies on any of this, or is it all, or does resistance matter?
There is the expectation that the local D space for the agencies that, whether all opt out, there is the expectation, both in policy and in the way the JPA is written, that they will receive funding 3 times a year. However, there was no pushback when we wrote the policy that the board approved, that if you don't give us the reports, you're not getting your check.
Right.
There was no pushback on that.
And ultimately, the voters are gonna look to this organization, to MWPA, because right on the surface, if you're a taxpayer advocate, for which I am
Exactly.
also one, exactly, although I'm not officially in cost,
No.
I have a strong interest in this. When you have 17 different agencies that are getting money and having sat in government and know how government can make money just move around, that it's appropriate to have some oversight, and it's not going to be when the members go to vote, they're not going to say, oh, did Marin's, whatever, pick the place, do anything. They're going to say, did MWPA effectively spend its money? So that's where the eyeballs are.
Well,
So
they start spending on other things, that's mission creep. to me. You know, going out, let's do a demonstration garden, whatever. You know, that's the other problem you have.
Right.
If maybe they don't have a fiduciary duty, all right, they may not rise to that level, all right, but it's certainly they have a duty to prove that they've spent the money the way the founding documents.
Yeah, and we'll get to, when we go through the 5 in detail, again, the famous issue with the Rangers is another example, right? So,
They keep coming back to
Talking about those
haunt
Rangers
these
forever.
meetings.
I know. So how do we feel about this? Are we okay with this from a perspective? Okay. Okay, that's that one. Let's see. Okay, that one's done. Then we have a listing of all the yeses and nos with regards to higher level of service. When we looked at higher level of service, we could say that we didn't have robust and consistent documentation, whether it said yes or no. And if the longer we move out from 5 years ago, it gets pretty soft. So we suggest that get this firm and hard and use it as a baseline. So that's basically the recommendation. And unless there's comment on that, we move on to the individual agencies. So we picked a few randomly, well, not exactly randomly. We did a risk analysis and we said, okay, we're going to look at 5 agencies and see how they did. Did the project appear to adhere to the JPA agreement and ordinance just simply by listening to the description of them, right? It wasn't like we're having a party. No, we're actually doing something that's consistent with lowering wildfire. Are there records to support a higher level of service? Are the personnel allocated to wildfire only? And are we keeping track of our rollover? Okay, so let's go through the 4. You'll note that in all 4 cases, the database total and these books and records I got on the last page, which came late, it said, all right, what exactly is your situation? And none of them agreed. We're 0 for 5. Okay, and we were 9 months out. And when you looked at that underlying database, there was no rollover columns. You literally didn't have anything. So clearly the records were not built to do this. Now they will be, I'm sure this cycle, I've got high confidence that it'll all be together, but these books were kind of a mess, right? And now we're looking at them in detail. Let's unmess them, is what we're suggesting here. Okay. So for San Rafael, the project descriptions appeared to adhere to the JPA agreement, no problem. For the famous Rangers, we were just saying, yes, that is well aligned with Measure C to use Rangers to do fire prevention. However, on item 3, we said, show us that it rains half of the year. Are they doing police activities at the same time? It seems to us that there's police activities built into this. Give us some records. The records we got were basically payroll records, which we couldn't do anything with. So we think that should be fixed. And they were not keeping track of the rollover. So that's where we were with that.
Just on the specific question, I mean, how do we keep track of what these Rangers are doing, really? I mean,
I think that at some level, it's worthy of a board conversation. Is it 100%? I think that's wrong. Is it 0? That's probably wrong too. There's got to be some level in the middle that says that feels right among the things that they do over the course of their month. I don't know what you guys do all day long, but I can't believe it's 100% stopping fire since it rains half of the year.
Right, that's the thing. It's seasonal.
Yeah.
Their importance is seasonal, not.
And there are police activities certainly also associated with dealing with homeless people in parks, right? So a rationale that says, because right now 100% of that money is funded through NWPA.
Is it full-time employees?
It sounds like.
There's 4
in San Rafael.
No, there's 2. And the way it's worked out, we have not funded all of them, but that's only through injuries and happenstance.
So we think this is worthwhile, not for the board to figure it out, right? Again, to your comments about we're not going to set policy here, but our policy is go explain yourselves.
I like that.
Yeah, right. So that's what we said. Go explain yourselves. Okay. All right.
So
Good.
That's San Rafael.
That's San Rafael. Okay. Next up is Nevada. Nevada is all vegetation, money to people, right? So the project descriptions appear to agree. These are new programs, so it's clearly a high level of service. There's no personnel cost, so that's easy. And the numbers don't work.
I was really confused by these numbers.
Yeah, well, they're wrong. I mean, it's just, these are not, I'll get into it.
Okay, never mind, sorry.
As a former CPA, sometimes stuff's great, and sometimes no, this is like a wreck. So this is more the latter than the former. Okay, City Mo Valley, again, I talk to people in the Valley all the time because I'm still involved in stuff down there. And I said, hey, what the hell's going on here? You guys not spending any money? Turns out that's completely wrong. We were spending money, but Tom Walsh had retired and we didn't have the data. So 9 months out, these days, this is all wrong. Okay.
So all those zeros don't belong there.
They really did spend money, right? Well, if you go back to the roll forward page, you'll see that Mill Valley spent $200,295 in 2023. Again, I'm not attesting to these numbers because I was just handed them. You don't tie to anything, but we will find out when the confirmations come back from the agencies. Okay, so vegetation management seems right? It seems like that's appropriate to the ordinance. We can't really comment about whether it's any other questions because we have no data. So basically, it's vacant as far as the data is concerned. So that's where that one is. Ross was doing defensible space evaluations and vegetation management. And I said, wait a minute, defensible space evaluations, that's DSpace. Why is DSpace data showing up in local? And it's because it shouldn't be there. It's a coding error. Again, giving you a sense for what kind of shape the database is in. You can form some overall conclusions. Like, so we have no comments on that because it doesn't make any sense. Then you got Stinson Beach is the final one. Seems like a great project. All good, except that the books don't reconcile. Okay. So overall, we say there's a general lack of evidence at the end in the NWPA files to consistently validate personal costs were allocated to only wildfire prevention. Of the only 5-member agencies reviewed, it is likely this information is also lacking at the other agencies. The COC recommends that staff collect and assess this information for each member agency with a reasonable amount of time, or if they don't get their move up. So basically, clean up the record. So if you look at it, we looked at overall all 17 in one way, and then we looked at 5 in a level of detail, and all of it says work needs to be done.
So are we waiting to get the numbers and we're gonna record whatever we get?
No, we're done for this year.
We're done.
We're done.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, we're done because you can't, come on.
This is the way
It's a year old. It's over a year old.
No, I got
Yeah.
it. That's just saying,
So
we're
our-
not gonna wait anymore.
Correct. Our findings are, and as a subcommittee, which we're hopefully will disband, we're not going to be writing in this, but we will the writing committee can tone it as we just.
Well, that's just recommendation 3, that has to be softened up a little bit.
Yeah, okay. So that was our work, the 2 Larrys and the job.
Excellent, really good, thank you.
And I'll just add to what John said earlier, our motivation is to make sure that when we go back to the public, that this is a clean agency, that people don't start digging and find things that we're finding now and go, wait a minute, you guys are wasting money, we want to make sure that we can go solid back to the public.
Well, the taxpayer representative.
Yeah, well, for sure.
On his own.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's face it, this is a highly complex organization.
Yeah,
It's highly complex. You got 17 different agencies getting money
Yeah.
in 3 different buckets. Okay, I mean, that's complicated. Right?
So how many people do we actually have tracking finances? Because that's a big deal. And so what you're basically saying
That's huge.
is that sounds like a huge
Well,
task.
within Marin Wildfire staff, we have myself, Lisa Schiffman as our treasurer, and Lauren Wolf as our accounting technician. When it comes to accounts receivable and payable, Martinez fits into that. But then we have accounting staff at various levels of capacity at 17-member agencies.
Right.
So that's
One way to look at it is, look, 17 times 3, right? So roughly 40, 50 checks. All this, at one level, this entity gives out 50 checks. That's not complicated. At another level, those 50 checks better be spent effectively.
Right.
And that's because you've got the board and the, all those committees and everyone's looking at all this stuff, right? So that's why it has the potential to be very tight as long as everyone does what they're supposed to do.
Just to be blunt about this, do all these agencies have the financial skills to be able to do what you're talking about?
I think that given there's so if Stinson Beach has 3 people that they get $20,000, yes. If San Rafael has 50 people and they get a lot of money, yes. So it kind of correlates to the size of the organization. And the ask is not that difficult. Personally, I think the 60s are bulletproof. Way too many eyes on the 60s, right? Everyone's taking a hard look at the 60s, right? Then you've got 2 sets of 20s. This is just my personal opinion. On the 2 sets of 20s, on the DSpace thing, now it's much more organized, right? And Pat will attest to this. Now you're down to 4 different groups that are doing the spend. They were in my neighborhood 2 or 3 weeks ago. Super efficient. Covered the whole neighborhood. Bang, bang, out the door. That seems pretty solid to me. If, as a person who spent my life doing risk analysis, where I would spend my time. That's what we did as CPAs, right? You didn't look at everything. You look at stuff that you thought was going to go boom in the night. the boom of the night one for me is the 20, because the pressure for expenditures when I give you the money versus, there's no one arguing with you, it's just your money, right? Centerfold gets their 20, Mill Valley gets their 20. Not everyone's not looking over each other's shoulder and going, Mill Valley, you're wasting your money. That natural oversight when you're sharing is not there. And this is the one that has the greatest potential in my view, particularly, I get into the bigger agencies because you got the 60 and the 20 in the same place. That you're a big organization, you're trying to make payroll, you know, you're the city manager, I worked with them, oh man, there's gotta be some place we can work this out, you know, so that's why I think that one needs the highest level of attention, even though it's a smaller number. So.
What's $4 million plus?
Yeah, exactly, right, exactly, right. Spread around 17 people, what could go wrong? You know?
Well, you just found out, didn't you?
Well, the answer, let me make it clear too, as Larry, and we were last talking, we didn't find anything wrong.
Yeah.
We didn't find any waste, we didn't find anything looking stupid. What we found was the records aren't tight, right?
Yeah.
And makes, you know, and that increases your possibility for mess, but it doesn't mean we found any mess anywhere. When we looked at what was in those descriptions, they seemed right, except for one we talked about 100 times.
And it decreases your ability to say to your neighbor, oh, it's a tight ship, and yes, you should vote yes the next time around.
Right.
They didn't embezzle any funds, great.
Yeah. At the federal level, that would be great. Okay, so that's that.
Okay.
We good with that one? Okay, next up is DSpace. We didn't get a new DSpace report. So Pat, you want to take the lead there? Or, I guess we looked at it last time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we felt like that was our final report. You raised a couple of questions, one of which was how the benefits for full-time inspectors affects things. And that's a question that is going to take a lot of digging into, because there is the question of benefits, but there's added value of being very knowledgeable and not just being new each year. The other question that you raised was about the attestations. And I believe that the attestations are for both local and DSpace. I don't think separate ones.
Correct.
For that. So those were the two issues that were raised. And
yeah. So we covered it on local essentially, because DSpace and local all come together, and our comment, the way we wrote our comment, referred to both. So I think I agree, that's put to bed. With regards to the question of the efficiency of direct hires, that is a little along those lines of being management versus, you know, our oversight role, but we still have a right within an active COC that was written on purpose back in the beginning to give us some flexibility to say, that doesn't feel right, does feel right. So I'm not suggesting at this late date that we do anything about it, but maybe that would be something that would be digested next year.
yeah, it definitely could be something that we could look into next year.
Okay, I'm fine with that, because we got to get on with it. We got to take this thing out the door. It becomes less and less relevant. So, are we all good on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Way to go, Pat. You're all done. Okay. And then finally, we have court.
And for
Everybody's
court,
eyes on it, yeah.
So who's leading court?
You got it?
Rebecca.
whoops, am I-
Back up?
Okay, so for court, the change that we made was Pat's comments from last time about the landscaping, the demonstration gardens, made it sound as if the master gardeners hadn't gone in and taken a look at this and done a good design job. So Spencer did a edit and we added in a paragraph. And I just realized that I didn't number the pages, so sorry. So I think on page 3, the added paragraph comes right after the bullet points, and it's right above the photos. So not the paragraph right above photos, but the one above that.
The COC also observes.
Yeah.
Exactly. The
Okay.
COC, you want to take a moment and read it?
Yeah, right. Any comments from us on that or any? I thought it read great. I don't have any issues with it personally.
What about Pat? Pat?
And Pat took a look at it and commented. Pat, you want to say what your comments were?
Pat's
She seems to be happy about it.
Yeah,
She's
she's
smiling.
happy.
smiling.
Rebecca, were you think she took a look at this new paragraph and had comments that you've already gotten? Or were you saying just that this was the paragraph because of her comments in the last meeting?
It is, I think I didn't quite catch what your first part of that question was. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm trying to figure out if we already know that she's happy with this paragraph or if we want to wait until she's back, basically, if we haven't heard that yet.
I have asked her for her opinion, since I
Okay.
knew that hers would be the strongest and I didn't want to have to go through this process yet again,
Okay.
since it wouldn't break a Brown Act rule, because we have a very small committee. So yes, I do know that Pat was happy with the paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment.
Hi, Larry.
I have one comment on it, that I would have liked to have seen the phrase drought tolerant plants added in there, since this is the kind of climate we have. In that sentence, that if we're talking about planting, that is the one thing I would have liked to have seen in there. Simply because we're always talking about it at the water.
Where's it, Larry? Where do you want?
That was the third paragraph again, where we were just, I just lost it.
Well, how about
Well, it says in
signage
keeping with the-
illustrating that drought tolerant marine native plants can be used to make them more pleasant? Is that
Well,
what
it
you
doesn't have
want
to necessarily be native and non-native, but drought
I
tolerant.
thought
And you take it further, you can even add that support pollinator species, which is another discussion we've had over and over again.
I just don't know where the phrase, I edited it, but I don't know where the marine native plants recommendation came from, so I don't know, I can't defend or, you know.
Right.
And again, just guys, giving you guys an idea how I'm going to respond to this is when I've asked some staff that are more familiar with plants that are adapted to this climate. Every one of those plants that's in this picture are plants that are adapted to this climate.
That's right.
So
Right.
the hardscaping in between, maybe what is referencing the more arid environment. What also most people make when they plant their gardens, the mistake that most people make is planting too many plants because they're small at the time that they plant them. And next thing you know, we're overgrown and we no longer have separation. So
Right.
I actually disagree with saying that these examples are not appropriate for our climate. I do think these examples are appropriate, especially when these plants are mature. And again, these are plants that are adapted to this climate here.
I think the observation though is based on looking at this, which is not what people are gonna do. So, it'd be nice if we actually were sort of recommending things or showing things that people are. more
Other
likely to do.
alternatives, yeah.
It's interesting in
And I-
light of Daniel Swain's recent presentation, because we are both climates. We are an arid climate during 4 months of the year.
And we do have a new brochure that's out or coming out from the Fire Safe Marin that gives landscaping recommendations to landscapers to work with their clients. And it does mention drought tolerant. I think it says Marin or what's the word I want? Native plants. So I don't know that we need to say too much specifically here. It's going to be covered by stuff that's timely next year, not even next year, next month.
So is it possible to take Larry's thought and slightly amend that paragraph to be reflective of a little broader reference?
I think it would be fine. I don't know that we're saying, I will take a look at the paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Just, just to,
Yeah, I'm not dying on this hill. It's just,
yeah, okay.
I mean,
Do we,
yeah.
do we want to, John, I'm thinking about your point on the last one, since this will come through our way again.
Yes,
Do we want to let whoever's on the writing committee take another look at the paragraph?
that's kind of what I'm suggesting, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I have no concept of what you are referring to as the writing committee.
We're about to discuss that.
Okay,
So we're okay?
I guess, okay, so it's for,
The writing committee can. take
for
it
further
up.
consideration, yeah, okay. Okay, so if that's okay, now, oops.
so there weren't any other changes to it, or other than that item about drought tolerant, anything else? Or is this a go for the committee?
I think it's a go. Is there anyone objecting to the tone of the direction of this part of the findings?
No objection.
Okay, all right. By the way, just I forgot to mention this before. When we did local, we didn't do a whole big blurb about the 60 to 20 to 20 and all that, because we figured it's going to show up someplace. You know what I mean? And it's nicely described already in the beginning of the 60 discussion.
Mhm.
And if you wanted to expand on it a little bit, there was also a little bit more when I wrote that thing at the beginning about how we're going to attack the year. So whoever ends up writing.
The writing committee will kick that back up at the top.
Exactly. Either do it 1, 2, 3 or do it all at the top.
I think we
whatever.
pulled it from last year too. It's almost the same.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So we now go
Moving
back.
right along.
Here, let's see.
Discussion.
There we go. Where are we? Okay. Okay. So now we are good. So now we are at the discussion item, which is the frequency and of meetings, et cetera. So can I start with a few thoughts? We previously.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. We had.
All in favor, no.
Yeah. All right. All right. I need my gavel. Yeah, so we had previously in one of the earlier meetings kind of had a general kind of idea, and I forget whether people were assigned this. We had a conversation that basically said, once the subcommittees are done with their writing, they kind of go away and we no longer have subcommittees. And then there will be another group who takes what is there, not change any of the content in terms of ideas, but change the wording a little bit to get it where it's tight. And then it comes back to all of us for further discussion. That's kind of the direction that we talked about heading. And that will have a bearing on frequency of meetings. So I think we're there to do that now, since we now have decent reports for all three components. Was there an agreement? Do I remember this? You were part of it, right?
Yeah, and the writing committee is basically cosmetic.
Yeah,
Do
correct.
not mess with the substance.
Right.
You know, you just spruce up the English.
Yeah.
Pat being the leader on that.
Yes.
And she did it last year.
She's shaking her head back
Yeah,
and
you
forth.
need to hear what she has to say about it, what she did this last time.
Yeah.
Pat, you're on mute.
What we had a writing committee the very first year. I think last year it was agreed that was inappropriate. Now, if
I'm proposing, to be clear, to do what we did last year, not to do what we did the first year.
right,
So I confirmed with council today that after you guys have gotten to the point where you feel that it's substance
Right.
of your three categories, you feel comfortable with that, disband those three ad hoc subcommittees and
Right.
create a writing ad hoc subcommittee, and we are completely clean.
And then the writing ad hoc subcommittee brings it back to the full board. And that's why there's no issue about Brown, because then the full board can say, you got that wrong, you didn't get it right. Yeah, we'll have a broad
Okay.
conversation about it again.
And there will no longer be the other ad hoc.
Correct, there's no
Right.
other ad hoc for you to connect with
Compromise.
that,
Right.
that violates.
Doesn't ping pong, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, but.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted Pat to talk about what she did last year, because I got the feeling that you did a lot of work, Pat, so it wasn't.
well, the work that I did last year, and it was a lot of work, but that was the graphic design. That the report was more or less written. We had written it, agreed on the parts of it, and then Mark and Martina just put the parts together. And then I worked with Joanne, the graphic artist, and Kingston was a part of that too, giving some final approval. But it wasn't, but that, it was already written. It was not a writing committee. That was, and so that's another whole level of what has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've run the writing committee essentially for TAM, CFC there, every year they have a report. And we basically, we all get involved in how it looks. And we do not mess with the substance.
Right, but there's still a few things left to do. We've already described today about toning that earlier suggestion to be responsive.
That's we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's your aesthetics.
Right. So I would propose this, if you guys are amenable to it, and if not, let's discuss it further. But first, I would propose that we disband the 3 subcommittees, so we know that those are done. And then we get a couple of volunteers to proceed as the way we've just described it.
Do you need a motion on that?
I think we should probably do a motion just to be real clean on that.
I would agree.
So can I just make a motion? I would make a motion that we disband the 3 subcommittees at this point, and that the writing committee takes that substance and then doesn't change any of the ideas, but does tone it.
I think it's not gonna be difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you need a second?
I think Kingston seconded.
Okay,
Whatever.
roll call. Is there any further discussion, by the way? You kind of.
And there's no public.
Well, also you guys on the screen is a little, have to remember to look at you. We don't want to ignore you.
That drove me crazy for 6 months.
Okay, roll call.
Jenny Biggs,
Yes.
Jennifer Howard,
Yes.
Pat Randolph,
Yes.
John McCauley,
Sure.
Spencer Sias,
Yes.
Kingston Cole,
Yes.
Larry Minnicus.
Yes.
Rebecca Suggs.
Yes.
Okay, so now we get into a writing committee. Are there volunteers? Let's start it that way. Are there Kingston volunteers that would be Kingston willing to Kingston help write this Kingston document? And somebody else who really knows a lot about English. I don't know who.
No, Pat is the expert. And Rebecca is also.
Pat can't do it this year.
Okay, that's fine. Well, you did a heck of a lot, so that's good. I mean, so who else wants to do it with Kingston?
Some of these newbies should be involved. In this,
Yeah, I agree.
you know?
This guy over here, you do.
I would, but my problem is I am so oversubscribed. I will only do it as a helper to another person who wants to lead the way. Kingston.
Yeah.
Well, you can't be a committee of one. That's a big joke at my
That's right.
house. I was in many committees of one. That's usually the way I was complaining
I
about.
bet you everybody laughs about that one.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you want to help out?
You know, I'm a really polite person and I don't want to offend Kingston or anyone else, but I really don't want to do it.
Okay.
I'm not doing it by myself, that's for sure.
Anybody else want to volunteer?
I hear Larry Chu volunteer.
That'll teach them.
I like that.
Sorry, Larry, if you watch this.
Jenny Biggs, what do you think? You willing to jump in?
I will. I have a ton of travel for work this fall. So I'd be in favor of helping if we could front load and really get to work. But I worry that if it's going to be over the course of a couple of months, it's going to be hard to stay engaged and help out.
Well, with regards to the timing, I'd love to have a meeting in a month to have it in front of us, except for the graphics,
Yeah.
and be done with the damn thing. We gotta get this out, otherwise it's
Well,
so
my problem is
irrelevant.
it's election season, and we get so many measures out, tax measures out there, we're going crazy.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of civil grand jury training. I'm training juries all over the state.
So what I heard from Pat.
I'm on the sales
and I
tax subcommittee, I'm the treasurer from November.
I think we heard
Yeah.
this from Pat, was that the bigger job was the graphic. So I don't know who's gonna manage that.
That would be
That's
done
what
by staff,
concerns
right?
me.
It was a combination of Martina, myself, Pat, and
Well, yeah.
refresh my memory on her name from the graphics design.
Oh,
Oh, and
Yeah, I have to look it up. Yeah.
What's her name, Pat?
Joanne,
Joanne.
Yeah, use somebody else other than one I recommend. That is, yeah, I recommend them.
She's done our last two.
Well, that's fine. I mean, just,
You got some pictures of cute goats. I mean, they make me laugh every time I see them, so.
Do you name them?
No, I don't.
So the staff will be able to give the same amount of support that we did. We just obviously don't want to get into the wordsmithing because it's not our role to do the wordsmithing.
yeah, no, well, the work study is pretty much done. It's just, I can see, you know, drought resistant plants.
Jenny, what we could do as staff, we can take the 3 Word documents, get them into 1 Word document, do our best to make it a single document that's not clunky, which we had to deal with last time. There was different formatting issues between, so we can collate them into 1 document, have the same formatting and stuff like that, and then pass it off to you guys for.
I'll come in and work with you. That's all I'm saying.
Does that work for you,
I'm
Jenny?
happy to do that. Yeah, if it's all in one document, I can help pretty quickly. I actually feel like the coordination on a committee takes more time sometimes than actually just sitting down and editing the document. So I'm happy to help.
And
Okay.
I'm assuming we have all 3 documents in Word already.
Yes.
Where we ran into hinky glitches last year was Google and Word, Microsoft Word conflicting with each other. So Jenny, what would be your preference, Google Docs or Microsoft Word?
I love Microsoft Word.
Then we will
Yeah,
put it
I'm
in,
absolutely with you. That's
we
all
will
right.
put it in Microsoft Word.
So I gave you mine in Word, or ours in Word.
Yes. In fact, I think we got them all in Word.
Okay, good. So that's-
Okay, so can I make sure, Kingston, it's you and I, right?
What, sorry, what?
Is it the 2 of us? Are we working on this?
You and I, right now it is. Yeah,
Okay.
the laggards are just not volunteering.
I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure I knew. All right.
So would it be reasonable to assume that by the next meeting, because this goes to your timing of how often we meet, by the next meeting, we would have all the words kind of presented back to us so we can say, okay, we got it. And graphics, like, do whatever you want. I don't care about the graphics personally.
Can we do that? You get everything together and I'll come over.
So
Yeah.
could we, because our next meeting is 30 days from now, so could we within, and at our 30-day
We'll
mark?
give it a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we're not ready, then, sorry to interrupt, if we're not ready, then I would suggest we don't have a meeting, right? And then we wait until you're ready. If it takes 2 meetings, just have
That's a good idea.
a break, right?
Yeah.
Right? So getting back to like, let's not meet every month if there's nothing to do.
Well, yeah, the board's not meeting next month, so, you know,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
so I mean, that's.
So it'd be great to get it done. So would it make
we'll push-
sense?
We'll push, yeah.
Yeah, to make sense if,
Jenny and I will work on this.
so we'll either meet in a month if we have the words, and if you guys pull the ripcord,
Okay.
it'll be 2 months. Does that seem, we agree with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
All right.
In agreement and strongly in favor of 1 month, not 2.
Absolutely. So then to move on to the next thing is when we start meeting again. And to me, just toss this out, you can guys say I'm crazy or whatever. First, we need to create new committees, and we may or may not have some of the same people, because you don't want to make them into standing committees, and there's plenty of room to figure that out. But
Yeah.
I would think that when we meet the next time, when we do the words, that we also agree to who's going to be on the 3 committees prospectively. And then the time we meet again is when he's already, we can go, right? Let's say I'm still on, whatever it's on the local. If he's ready and I can see him within a month, we can get going. I mean, we need to really get this next report out as quickly as possible. And then not have to meet every month to talk about process, because I think we now have a process in place. It's just a matter of when we have a product, and the product is a function of him being ready for us. And I think we eventually would draw a line and say, if you're not ready within this many months, we're going to come in and report on what we see, because we can't keep the books open forever, right?
When is our next meeting?
The month, the 3rd week of the next month, right?
Yeah.
Fourth Wednesday.
To the 21st.
Of August.
21st.
4th Wednesday is the way you count it?
If it's
So
the
that would be
4th
the
Wednesday, that's the 28th.
28th.
Yeah, it's a 20. I've got it at 28th.
I'm gonna be in Greenland.
That's
Yeah,
the
I
actually.
got it too.
Teaching the grand jury.
No, that's, I'm going from here to Ukiah to do that, but no,
I would be remote, but actually.
All right.
Well, I still think we should, let's go and have this meeting, So the next meeting would be on the 28th. At that meeting, we would hopefully have, or you pull the trigger and say not ready. And if we're ready,
I'll let you know.
yeah, we'll have the meeting, we'll talk about the words, we'll get the word locked. And then I would also propose on that agenda, also agree to who the people will be on the committees in the subsequent year. And then not meet again until those committees have gotten some work product, because there's no reason to sit around and look at each other until we have work product.
I think each committee should probably have at least one member from this previous year on it.
Yes.
To provide that historical reference,
Exactly.
institutional memory, shifting over, so.
So would you, at that meeting where you're pulling those committees together, put together a tentative timeline? Would we consider as a group putting together a timeline for getting the next report out so we can actually work to that timeline?
Sure. I mean, that could all be part of the agenda, and that has to also be interacting with what you guys think you can get done. Because you already know what the findings are for this year. You're working on this year's findings already, so hopefully we can get this thing out within 6 months. I mean, we'll be more than 6 because that gets us to December. But maybe we can get it done by December. But let's figure that out at the next meeting. We'll do the meeting. We'll do the meeting.
Right.
But I like that to be the agenda. And then in terms of what subsequent meetings are going to occur, instead of saying they're monthly, say we meet when we've got stuff to do because we've made progress, and we can kick that around next month as we come up with a calendar.
Yeah.
If we have regular
Oh, yeah.
meetings, the public, I mean, there's nobody here, but the public is usually accustomed to regular meetings.
So how many times have we had members of the public show up?
That's
CIC?
irrelevant.
Sort of.
Yeah,
I mean,
sort of, kind of, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it's up for us to decide.
yeah, we can figure this all out next month, but I mean, the finance committee doesn't meet every month, right? It meets just a few times a
Whatever.
year when there's stuff to do, right?
But
And the key is that we're providing proper oversight, whether we meet once a year, as long as we're providing proper oversight, everyone agrees it's proper.
Yeah.
I don't know that
And you notice the public, okay,
whether it's 10 or 12 or 8 meetings really is.
yeah, we like our meetings, so.
I could use more
Right.
meetings for sure.
Okay.
Oh, God.
I don't have enough meetings.
All right, anything else, John?
So that is that topic. Now we have requests for future agenda items, which is kind of like, is there anything else you want to cover besides that? Okay.
Anyone? No?
No.
And my favorite item number 13, I would pleasantly suggest that we adjourn unless there's anything else we want to talk about.
So moved.
Seconded.
And we don't have to vote on that, do we?
Just say
bye-bye. All right. And push the goodbye. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank
Nice
you
to
all.
see you.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, everyone.